Welcome to HBCU Her Voice, a place where we celebrate the powerful voices and stories of remarkable women from historically Black colleges and universities. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington, a proud HBCU graduate myself. I'm thrilled to bring you this platform dedicated to amplifying the voice of our community. We dive into inspiring stories of resilience, success, and the incredible impact these women are making in the world. From trailblazing entrepreneurs to innovative leaders, we bring you the stories that matter, showcasing how HBCU experiences shape paths and fuel passions. We'll explore challenges, victories, and wisdom. Whether you're an HBCU alum, a student, faculty member, supporter, or simply someone who believes in the power of diverse voices, we are so glad to have you. So listen up as we share insights, celebrate achievements, and uplift our community. Together, we can inspire the next generation of leaders and ensure our voices are heard loud and clear. A grand welcome to HBCU Her Voice. Whoop, and just like that, coming up on a Friday. I don't know where y'all gonna see this, but it's my Friday, so I'm feeling real good. And I'm so happy to have made it because this week, y'all, my goodness, I'm just happy to be standing. But you know where we are. We're in the HBCU Her Voice podcast. And I'm your amazing host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. And like no other, guess what? We have another amazing guest. She's going to be the first representative from her school. I'm going to let her tell it. I don't tell all the tea. I let them do it, okay? So we're going to jump into the drill. She tells us her name, where she's streaming from, which HBCU she's repping, and guess what? We get that story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very beautiful guest for today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelik. Angie Holloway, and I am the managing attorney of Edmonds Law Office. I am streaming here from Atlanta, Georgia, and I am repping Winston-Salem State University. Go Rams. A little bit about my story is I have been practicing law for almost 8 years now. I studied journalism at Winston-Salem State and then went to study critical race theory at UCLA Law. Go Bruins. And so now I manage a small business law firm where I help 6- and 7-figure businesses manage their risk with contracts, insurance audits, and people management. So a little bit about my entrepreneur story. I started my business at the beginning of the pandemic. After I left a job that was just too emotionally draining for me. I was working in a small firm. And the drama there was just too much for me to manage. And so I started my firm at the beginning of the pandemic doing civil rights and landlord-tenant law. And I practiced that for about 6 years. And the last year and a half or so, I made the transition to doing transactional work and business work because civil rights began to be a little bit draining for me. And that began to manifest in my body and sickness and migraines. And bleeding ulcers, believe it or not. And so that led me to transition into doing business work for clients where I can still serve my community and help business owners mitigate their risk without all of the vicarious trauma that I experienced when I was doing civil rights work. Although I still believe that's very important work and that other civil rights activists need to continue to pick up that torch and keep it going. It's just something that I could no longer do for my own mental and emotional well-being. And so when I am not practicing law, I love to lift weights. I work with a trainer and I like to lift heavy. I love to do hot yoga, hike with my husband and my fur baby, Grover, who is a boxer lab mix. So I look forward to talking more about my business and some of the things that I've struggled with as we continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Angie, for that information. I'm, again, so happy to have you here and, of course, representing your school. Let's first talk about the transition or the decision, I should say, for HBCU. How did you end up at your particular HBCU? And give us a little bit about that experience, because I know there are a couple of things that come to mind. I can think about the top 2 to 3 words that I can describe my experience in. I want you to kind of give us that and how you ended up there.
Yeah, so I was raised for most of my childhood in Omaha, Nebraska. And so there are no HBCUs there. And so I ended up going to DC for a little bit, spent some time with my aunt and uncle, and I received a package in the mail. And it was a recruitment envelope from Winston-Salem State University offering me the Chancellor Scholarship, which is their preeminent scholarship. It's a full ride for the full 4 years of your undergraduate degree. So that was the first introduction to Winston-Salem State University. I was not familiar with them prior to that recruitment envelope showing up. I actually thought it might have been spam. But then I did some research on it and I went down and visited the school and I fell in love. Before that experience, I had only seen HBCUs on TV, like Stomp the Yard. It's not something that's widely discussed, I would say, in the Midwest, where there's not very many HBCUs. So my experience there was amazing. I think having both experiences at a HBCU for undergrad and a PWI for law school, I really appreciated the investment that I had from my professors, people that look like you, understand, and give you that insight and that professional development. So you don't have to kind of learn that stuff as you go.
Oh, I love it. And, that's what's coming up so often on the show is that they say, oh, I left my HBCU and I went into a PWI or I went into corporate or I went into, whatever it is. And it was like, oh my gosh, that footing was so good, right? It was just like, I was just so happy to have that good footing in it. And that was always to my story because I've said it probably, I don't know, a dozen times since I've been recording. I said, when I went to corporate America, not Angie, and it wasn't nobody who was looking like that. What happened? I was looking around there like this, walking down the hall.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of scary. I mean, when you're trying to adapt, especially after having the comfort of an HBCU where your experiences are validated, your voice is heard, people understand, and then you have to go and kind of be in a place where you're misunderstood and everything is being critiqued and criticized. And am I showing up wrong? Am I appearing unfriendly? All these different things and nuances that you have to navigate when you're no longer in the comfort of an HBCU.
Yes, and it is. And that's why, I of course, I use this platform to advocate for it. I do believe that people should make their own decisions in terms of what school they decide, whatever. But for me to have come from such a rich culture of HBCU, it was just kind of my mission to be able to highlight that so that people can have more informed decisions about potential HBCUs. But let's go with the connection. I know you started off with journalism and then you transitioned into law. Yeah. How that connection, talk about, like why you chose journalism, because, obviously that was something maybe that you liked at that time, but then it was like, now I'm going to law school. Talk us through that walk and then jump to law school.
Yeah. So journalism was kind of my first love, actually. I was a very nosy child. And I can remember probably as young as 7 or 8, having kind of that journalism insight or desire. And so I remember back in elementary school, there was a kid that fell off a swing and ended up cracking his head open. And there was a huge presence, and there was the ambulance came, the police was there. And so everyone was looking out the window, and I actually left the classroom and went down there to go and ask the reporters what had happened to the kid. Did I know the kid? And of course I got in trouble. But that was kind of my first journalism interview that I had done at that young of an age. And then I ended up joining the school newspaper, and I did that all the way through high school. And so really helping people to be informed and know what was going on and be involved, that was kind of the foundation for my interest in journalism. And law kind of came into play when my parents got involved in the criminal justice system. And so my interest in law and journalism kind of married with one another, because I became interested in the prison industrial complex. And I was wondering, why are so many Black people in jail? And I started to look into, drugs and the war on drugs and how that impacted my family personally. And so I became interested in criminal defense and civil rights at a very young age as well.
Oh, I love it. And, now that I'm older and I look back at things like, like the war on drugs and different things like that, it's kind of heartbreaking, because when you see those ties as it relates directly to your community, directly to your family, it really is something that can take a toll, because you hear about it. I can remember hearing war on drugs when I was so young, right? I didn't understand really the big impact of it and all of that, how it ripped through these communities, tore down families, just did all these kind of different things. But when you go back and look, Yeah, it can get to a heavy place, and it helps you understand the history in this country and really kind of beyond. So thanks for shedding light there. I want to go to this transition of working from this small firm that was very toxic.
Yeah.
Look, around that time, Angie, I was in a toxic place too.
Yeah.
You know, I said, I had about maybe about a couple more weeks in me before I would have just came out of character all the way. And we didn't want that now, Angie. We wanted,
Right.
we wanted this very nice version of Sinead to stay intact. But I was almost there to where like this is becoming too much. And it was during the pandemic. I left corporate in 2021. I started to have very toxic things happening really in 2020 during George Floyd, specifically at that time, whatever. So I had a bunch of compound things going on with me internally while trying to stay in this workplace. Right. I want you to talk about that decision that today is the last day. Today is the day that I go file this LLC. Today is the day that this thing is being birthed, because what will happen, and so what so many women will do, they will make that chaos and that toxicity norm. And they don't take any action to get out of that. So I want you to talk about your experience with the choice of yes to Angie, and then now I'm building my firm.
Right. So for me, I think I always wanted to have my own practice, but the kind of tipping point for me was that the individual that I was working for, he had kind of a control complex. And I remember one night, it was late, maybe 11 o'clock at night, and he asked me to go to the office to get a file. And I requested, hey, I can get it in the morning. I think I had a flight somewhere. And he said, no, you're going to go get it now. And so in that moment, I felt like, of course, disrespected. I felt like, and this was one of many instances, but it was kind of like the straw on the camel's back, where I felt that I had worked so hard and I was working very hard to impress him, where I was working 70, 75 hours a week at that time. I wasn't getting paid some weeks at all. I had to front costs. There was so many things that were going on. And then I thought to myself, I didn't work this hard to be disrespected in such a way. And then I went and spoke to my grandmother, who was my heart, and asked her, like, how do you think I should navigate this? And she was like, well, if it's gotten to a point where you don't think you can, stay in the workplace, you need to start planning your exit. And so I was really concerned. I had all these doubts. I was like, well, I've only been practicing law for 3 years at that time. I need to get at least 2 more years under my breath. I had all these excuses. I was thinking, well, what are people going to think? It's been less than a year since I've been with this firm. Is that going to impact my reputation? But ultimately, after thinking on it and praying on it, I felt God say, go, it's time. And so that was the end of December of 2019. I submitted my resignation. And then a couple of weeks later, I filed my LLC.
I love it. And you're right. And that was kind of the thing for me when God said it was time to go, but I still was looking at him like, for real? Like,
Isn't it funny how we do that when, you'll hear God's voice clearly, either directly to you or, in a dream or via someone else being the messenger. And then we'll be like, no, I'm not ready. And God will be like, I said what I said.
I only said what I said, but I meant that thing, okay? Because I'm
right.
And even then, I'm not saying that it's been easy, right? There's been so many different things that have happened since that time. I know so much. I'm gonna have to learn so much, right? And I was just thinking, like, every time I try something, I'm like, Lord, can I just do something? I don't feel like learning right now. I just want to do the thing. And I find myself having to take a few steps and then research the next 5 steps and do this and that. But it's been such a journey. Really a self, to be honest with you, Angie. I mean, a journey of unlocking these different layers to myself and my capabilities, what I'm able to do, especially using him as the guide, the source, the light, and allowing him to amplify the things that he has already put innately in us, right? So it has been that period for me, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, even the lows, right? Because I've learned so much. I feel like on a pre-AP course from 2022. And I'm so forever thankful for it. And I'm happy you touched on that. Yes. He told you, yes, Angie, that it's time to be out there doing. And look at Angie standing in front of us today. And she's now going to transition and tell us about Edmonds Law, because I want to know specifically what type of law that she's practicing, and really some of these services to give us kind of an insight into what you do for your clients.
Yeah. So basically, what I do for my clients, I come in and I do a risk analysis. I figure out what the biggest holes in their risk mitigation plan are, and I create a strategy to fix those. And so normally those areas of risk are in one of three buckets. The first one is contracts. The second one is insurance, and the third one is people, right? And so those are the three biggest risks that most business owners have. And so typically when you're starting to build a business, you may have taken some shortcuts as far as your contracts are concerned. Maybe you used a free or low cost template like LegalZoom. Maybe you drafted your own contracts. Maybe you asked ChatGPT, right? And so as you begin to scale, that contract that you were using is no longer going to be sufficient in order to protect your interests, right? So there's going to be gray areas, there's loopholes, there's law changes, there's incorrect law, all of these things when you're using those contract templates that aren't that important to you at the beginning, when you only have a few customers, before your brand has a lot of visibility, before you have a huge clientele or a huge following, right? And so as you continue to scale, now you have to worry about who I call litigious Lucy, right? So this is somebody who's looking for a come up, right? Someone who might file a frivolous lawsuit against you, someone that might accidentally slip and fall on your property, right? And so you have to begin thinking from a risk mitigation standpoint where we're going to, okay, what are our contracts? What kind of insurances do we have? Are we complying with all the conditions precedents of our insurance, right? So one of the things that I see a lot of my clients struggle with is they don't read their insurance policies. So you have a cybersecurity policy, for instance, and then it requires you to have two-factor authentication. It requires you to have certain password requirements. It requires you to have certain level of training for your staff, right? But you have the policy, but you don't have the requirements. And so when you need to actually file a claim under that insurance, they're going to deny that claim because you didn't comply with conditions precedent. And so that second part, that second bucket, when we're talking about insurance, we're making sure that you are doing the things to effectuate that policy in the event that you need it and that you have adequate coverages, right? The minimum, the state minimums or regulatory minimums are not often enough as you're continuing to scale. You're going from that 6 to 7 figure business as far as your revenues are concerned. And lastly, we have that people bucket. So we look at your systems, your operations, how you're hiring people to make sure that they're implementing the same process with each customer or client so that you can minimize issues with, let's say, your intellectual property being stolen. We have like non-compete clauses that we need to talk about, issues with employees making mistakes that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we were looking at your systems to make sure that all of the policies and procedures we're implementing on the legal side are being followed all the way through.
I tell people these podcasts, I know it's for the people, okay? For the HBCU. Like Angie just be cracking up. I think Angie said this lady's crazy. The HBCU, her voice, listeners and stuff, but like a lot of these times, these podcasts be for me too, because I just be back here taking notes. Because I definitely have a cybersecurity policy because I brought it. I'm just being 100%. But I bought it in a package with some other stuff that I needed when we were starting to try to look at different contracts, like on a state and local level. They required my business to be insured, and it it came with all of these errors and omissions and all these different things that my business owners, they may know what I'm speaking about here. And to be honest, I don't even know if in my cybersecurity policy if I'm required to have a two-factor authenticator code.
Yeah,
I don't know that. And that was something that kind of spoke to me, because I have, outside of like the business insurance, I've been dealing with a lot of things in terms of health insurance with my grandparents and learning about different little loopholes that was in respect to that. So I honestly hadn't had like a lot of time, to be quite honest with you, to even go down like a fine-tooth comb into this other land of insurance, right? Because insurance is like a thing, right? Any kind of insurance you have, it's all these different things that go with it. Because I had been so heavy on the medical side, and they had just was like, oh, you didn't talk to us about your monthly premium, and us being to be able to draft out your account monthly. So we just took the whole annual premium. I was so busy, Angie, with all this health stuff. I almost called those people and had a real not so nice word with them.
Right.
I did remember seeing an email saying, okay, annual renewal is coming up. I said, okay, I put it on my calendar, whatever. I'm doing all this stuff, doing this. And I just get an email from them. Oh, we just put you on the annual. And they took the entire annual premium.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the business insurance. And when I was thinking about that, I'm like, okay, you have me really wanting to go now for sure, and actually putting some time on this calendar to say, okay, you have to go through all of these things, because yes, you have it in play. And like I said, a lot of things that prompted me to go out there and get it was because these particular contract opportunities said you had to have X number of amounts of coverage. So you go out there kind of mining for like the most affordable thing that you can get, but you're just matching up to their requirements. But actually understanding, like outside of that, with a fine tooth comb, what this really means, I personally have not done that. When you said cybersecurity, I said I got a whole policy. I don't know.
I mean, that's pretty common though. Honestly, like a lot of my clients, they're not familiar, with what's actually in their policies or what's in their contracts. And so until something bad happens, right, which is kind of totally different from what I'm doing. My practice now is proactive, where I used to represent individuals in court. Like my goal is to prevent you from being sued, right?
That was going to be
while us being by being proactive versus, waiting till you get served. Right, waiting till the company gets served. And so if you have kind of that lackadaisical approach when it comes to your risk management strategy, you're gonna struggle with some things, because when you need that cyber security policy and you need that claim to be paid, something happened with data. A lot of my clients are medical professionals. You make a violation, and they're coming after you. And then the first thing the insurance company is going to do is see, what can we do not to pay this claim? Oh, look, they didn't comply with our policies. So we're going to deny this claim. And now what are you going to do with, a several $100,000 judgment against your business? I mean, for most companies, that could bankrupt the company.
Oh, definitely, for sure. So if I understand this correctly, like at what stage typically are the clients coming? They're saying, okay, I'm about to draft this new contract, or okay, I'm about to go buy a new insurance plan. For the most customers or clients that you serve, where are they kind of in their decision-making process by the time they say, okay, hey, I may need Angie?
So normally my clients are in the scaling phase. So most of the time they've been in business for a minimum of 2 years. They already have a team, usually at least 5 people, and they are usually high 6 figures or approaching 7 figures when they usually bring me in. Now, of course, I would love to work with people that are not quite yet at the scaling phase, but what I find is typically they haven't prioritized legal at that point, and or they don't have the budget for legal at that point. And so it really is a question of risk, right? So before you get legal involved, before you're interested in hiring outside general counsel or having a contract drafted that's a professional, well-drafted, researched contract, you kind of have to think about where your risk allocations are. Some people are like, hey, I'm willing to take the risk on ChatGPT until I get sued, right? They have a high tolerance for risk. Other individuals are like, hey, I'm willing to set aside some money at the beginning of my business to make sure I'm set up correctly legally, right? So I always recommend the latter, but a lot of times, just to be honest, people don't have the budgets for that. And so you end up in situations where somebody stole your IP, somebody's profiting off of your brand, you're getting chargebacks, you might be sued, all different types of things that happen when you don't have that proper legal foundation, but you have to be in the headspace that you want to prioritize that and avoid those headaches, and you have the money to invest in that.
Yeah, for sure. And I do know that cost implication is something that, especially sorting out, that will be kind of really last on a totem pole in terms of like, legal and all these kind of things. But, I know me personally, I'm like, okay, we're definitely hoping that 2025 brings greater things for, our podcast, our brand and everything. And that is like at the top of my list right now. That's actually something on my 2025 board, is that as this thing begins to grow, because we know it will, we're declaring that it will, that we are set up properly to be able to do that, because that's always something that kind of, I don't want to say it hunts me, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind because I mean, prior to this, like I think I've lived a lot of life, but one of the times in my corporate career, we were specifically a risk management team. And I've seen risk on a larger scale than a lot of people have been able to see it. So, when you work with, trading and financial services and, you have a trade that fails and it's like millions of dollars on the line, you see risk in a different way. Even though, it's not your personal business, but you understand the implications of risk. So thank you for talking about it in that light. I really appreciate it, Angie. Let me go here from just a personal kind of standpoint. Since you've been on this, this journey of building your standing firm in Edmonds, what's kind of that next? And I don't mean like, next, like it don't even have to be 5 years down the line. It could be next year, but just thinking like on a futuristic track. What are you hoping are those next big strides for Edmonds Law?
Yeah, so I think at this stage, I am hoping to bring on a team and work on scaling myself. So, I mean, I've kind of gone up and back. So I've had times in my practice where I had another attorney working for me. I had a couple more support staff. I have a lot of vendors that I work with. And so now it's kind of a season where I've scaled back a lot as I've transitioned from litigating to doing more transactional work. And so I've done a lot of, I think, recentering and mind work on what is it that I want my business to do for me and what do I want it to look like, particularly in this new stage of me being recently married and also wanting to have a family. And thinking about my business supporting me in a way where I have that freedom and not just me always working in the business. And so there's a lot of components that go with that. But I think the first one, my first priority is to prioritize videos and doing more videos as part of my marketing strategy. And then my second one, hiring a new attorney to assist. And so I can be more in the CEO role instead of in the servicing role. And then I would say thirdly is just refining my offers and making sure that they are aligned with the community that I want to serve. And so I'm always asking my clients, like, what could I have done better? What did you like? What didn't you like? And so I think into 2025 and just generally, that's kind of something that's really important to me in my brand.
Absolutely, and definitely a huge focus on those videos, Angie, because it is kind of the way of the world, in terms of marketing. And I'm so happy you're here because you'll get to capture some video. And you're so great on camera. You're great at talking about what you do. I've had a really good time. And also, too, I think that it brings that personal branding aspect when your clients can actually see you, actually see Dr. Angie talking about it. And then guess what, Dr. Angie? People don't be wanting to deal with all that legal stuff. So when they can see your face and you bring a transparent nature to it, it helps. Like it really, really helps. Like this and having you say that about the cybersecurity and just the way that we're having a natural conversation, it really piqued my interest so much so that I'm like, okay, you're going to put some on this calendar, girl, and you're going to take some time and do it. But it's so important that you do it and share it in that light so that your clients have that looking to you. So I want to thank you for checking something off the box and being here today to get this video, to get this video in motion. Now, we can't leave Dr. Angie without you telling us where to find the law firm and what you do, whether it's the website or any other information that you want to leave for connection points so that we have it in our podcast notes.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me at my website. It's aedmondslaw.com. My firm is still Edmonds Law Office. That is my maiden name. But you can find me there or on social. I'm at Edmonds Law on Instagram and Facebook. And I also am reviving our YouTube channel, and that's at Edmonds Law as well.
I absolutely love it. Now, this is the part, Angie, where in the show, I cue to my guests for their final thoughts. I tell them if they capture nothing but this moment, this is where you give us some final parting words for this space and really give us something that captures the essence of Angie Holloway. So I'm going to cue it over to you for final thoughts.
Okay. Final thoughts. All right. If you are a business owner and you have a 2-page contract, I promise you, you do not have all the provisions that you need in that contract. If you are ready to have your contract audited and make sure that your business is ready for the next stage of growth, I would invite you to book a call with my intake coordinator or with me directly on my website at aedmondslaw.com. I look forward to working with you all and we specialize in creating custom contracts to keep more profits in your pockets.
Y'all heard Angie say that little 2-page contract. It just might not be it. I want to make sure you captured that, okay? So listen, this has been another fabulous episode of HBCU Her Voice. The time just flies around here because we just have real conversations and we give it to the people in the best way that we think that will resonate. So I'm so happy that Angie Holloway took a time on this Friday to spend some time on the HBCU Her Voice podcast. I tell you guys, transformative things happen when you let your voice shine. I will never leave this place, so I'll tell you that I love you. And I'll be back really in no time with another amazing woman. But until that time, we're out.